Hello, can you guys hear me? Okay, thanks, Tepang.
Yes.
I had promised you guys that I will update the notes and give you a bit more information on the guarantees. So that's what I have on the slides now. So I'm just gonna run through it quickly so that you follow it up. So with insurances and securities, if you remember, I had the clauses here, and then what followed was the security clauses. So what I've done is with insurances, I've told you the types of insurances. So we have the core insurances, which is your contract works insurance that the contractor is responsible for. And that includes goods that are in transit, off-site storage, site risks, and defects during the liability period. So that is the sort of insurance that the contractor needs to have in place. And then there's also insurance against liability. So your third-party liability, and all of that. And then you have your SASRIA, which covers you against force majeure events. And then there's further considerations for insurance where you could have lateral support, and then you could have insurance. So I suppose marine cover for imported equipment. So that would have to be on a ship. So here where we mentioned transit, it would be, so for instance, if it's imported material, then let's say it's imported from China and then it arrives in Durban. And from Durban, it has to be driven. I would say rail, but our rail system has pretty much collapsed. So it would be driven in a truck or whatever it is from Durban to Johannesburg. So you would need insurance should anything happen. Maybe the truck is in an accident, or maybe, I don't know, a robbery happens. So yeah, that sort of thing. So you have marine advanced loss of profit. So for whatever reason, if there's a delay with the delivery of the shipping, that time that you lose, sort of, you have to cover it. So these are things the contractor needs to take into account, or whichever of the parties is responsible. Then you have your secondary insurances, which would be workmen's compensation compliance. This is applicable for employees, so the contractor's employees, the employer's employees, the companies. And then you have common law liability compliance, any other policies that would be imposed by law. Plant all risk cover for contractors and subcontractors. So this is for the plant that they're using on site, because this is not much part of the works, but it's necessary for the works to happen. Then you have motor vehicle liability insurance. This could be for vehicles that are used for the site and or that have to do with work getting to site, the contractor's motor vehicles. You don't want your contractor telling you that he had a car accident, now he doesn't have a car and he can't get to site and stuff like that. And then you have your professional indemnity insurance, which covers the professionals that the client would have contracted to design the project. In the event that they fail in their duty, you can claim from their professional indemnity. Then you can insure project delay, depending on what's available in the market. Okay, so I just thought I should give you a bit more detail so that when a question comes in the exam, you don't say we never discussed this in class. Then on securities, we spoke about your fixed construction guarantee and your variable construction guarantee. So you have the fixed construction, which comes in at 10%. So it's given at the beginning. It's 10%. And then on practical completion date, it expires. Okay. So it then the value of work certified will be subject to 5% reduction. And then the value of work. Okay, so this should have been 5% here. This is I think I made an error. I'll correct it. This is 5%. It should not be this. I was wondering why would we have, so there, I'll correct it. So here, it's a typo. It should be 5%. So you give fixed 5%, and then you give, so it would be, so I'm just going to put it in red so that you know, but I'll correct it and put it, since it's in the notes. So it's 5% that you get Okay, let's just make it bigger and bold. So it's 5% of contract sum. They give a fixed guarantee. And then at practical completion, that 5% is given back. But from the start, we take a 5% retention. Generally, how it's administered is for every payment, we take 10% of that payment up to a maximum of 5%, okay, of the contract sum. So in the end, the contractor would have given a guarantee of all in all 10%, but in different ways. So you have the fixed guarantee, and then at practical completion, we give the fixed guarantee back, which is the 5% of the contract sum. And then with regards to payment reduction, at practical completion, we give 2.5%. So we give half the payment reduction or half the retention. So at practical completion, the contractor will get 2.5% of the 5% retention plus his fixed guarantee. And then at final completion, we release the entire payment reduction. So then the contractor has everything. Then you have your variable construction guarantee. So variable construction will start at 10%. So the contractor gives it upfront 10% of the contract sum. Okay, so if we're tendering and we sign the contract at 10 million, he gives us 10%, a guarantee of 10% of that 10 million. And then when 50% of the work is done, so not 50% of the work, but we've certified 50% of the contract sum. And this is where the problem is with this thing, because then the contractor can look at the big cost items and then he reaches the 50% quicker. Or if they front end loaded and the costs are higher at the beginning, and then at the end, you find that you give back the guarantee when most of the work has not been done. So 50% of the contract sum, once you certify half of that 10 million, which is the contract sum, then we reduce the guarantee to 6%. So it's no longer 10, we hold 6% from him. And then when we reach practical completion, it reduces further to 4%. And then at final completion, it reduces to 2%, so that when you certify final completion, sometimes the final account is not ready. So you don't issue a final payment. You issue an interim payment and you withhold just 2%. And then on the final date of payment, on the final payment, you release everything. So here, Professor Marit made this diagram to sort of, Nonhlanhla, your hand is noted, give us a diagram of what it looks like. So there is your variable construction starting at 10%. So this would be like your construction or contract sum. And then these are your guarantees. So you have that at 10%. And then when you reach 50% of contract sum, the guarantee goes down to 6%. And then 6% from that 50% of contract sum until practical completion. So when we certify practical completion, then it goes down to 4%. Then all the way until final completion. And then at final completion, it goes down to 2%. And then when we issue the final payment certificate, which is when we certify a final account, sometimes if for whatever reason it happens here, which is unlikely, I think you have about 90 days to get the final account sorted. At final account, you release. So then your retention, not retention, but your guarantee is 0 at this point. And this is when you move on to that latent defects liability period, the 5 years. Then you have your fixed construction guarantee. So you see it's fixed at 5%. Plus, which is here. So there's your fixed, the dotted line. But then you have that payment reduction, that where you reduce 5% of or 10% of the payment. So each payment you pay him less a certain amount until it's a maximum of 5% of the contract sum. So all in all, he's given you 5% in fixed, and then you would have another 5% in payment reductions. So it's a 10%. And then at practical completion, which is here, then we would release a fixed guarantee, which is the dotted line. and then your retention or payment reduction will go down to 2.5%. So if you see, it's at 2.5%, and then at final completion or final certificate. So at final certificate, when we release the final account, we give the remaining 2.5, so we're left with 0. So then the third one is payment reduction, which is not really a JBCC thing. It's at the employer's discretion. If your contractor can't give you these, the variable or the fixed, then you decide you're going to withhold 10% of their payment. So you see, so you would be withholding money up until you reach a maximum of 10%, and at that maximum of 10% of the contract sum, the project continues and you can no longer retain anything because you've reached maximum. So depending on when you reach it, and then at practical completion, it goes all the way down to 2%. And then at final completion, you release everything. Nonhlanhla, I didn't want to disturb my train of thought. You can come through with your question. I'm listening.
Thank you and good evening. Can you please go back to the slide before this one? Thanks. So are you saying on the fixed construction guarantee or on both, if the contractor is unable to produce to the client this guarantee, so these are the percentages that we can withhold as the employer? Is that what this says? Hi, ma'am. I'm not sure if you got my question.
Yeah, I
think we
did,
were
and then I'm
disturbed.
speaking while muted because I tried to mute Vianney and then I muted everyone, including myself.
Okay.
Sorry, because Vianney was broadcasting. Vianney, I'm the only one who's allowed to broadcast, please. So what I'm saying is this. So if you, I think you can see my cursor. So under fixed guarantee, this is what happens. If he gives us a fixed guarantee, this is what we do, right? If he gives us a variable guarantee, this is what happens. So if he's giving a fixed guarantee, he gives us a guarantee for 5%, and then the other 5%, we take it in payment reduction, okay? Does that make sense?
Okay, yes.
Okay, and then if it's a variable construction guarantee, at the beginning of the project, he gives us 10% of the contract sum, which is what we've contracted on.
Okay.
Yeah, and then when he reaches 50% of contract sum, so when we are certifying half of the contract sum, so I made the example of a 10 million contract. Obviously, this is a small contract of fencing around Nazareth. We're putting, what is it, Clearview, so 10 million. When he reaches 50%, which is not 50% of the work, but 50% of the contract sum. So when we certify half of that, which is 5 million, then we reduce the guarantee to 6%. Okay. Because,
Okay.
and then when he reaches practical completion, we say, okay, fine. At practical completion, we are happy with a construction guarantee of 4%. So then it goes down from the 6 to the 4. So you see why it's called variable. Then at final completion, 2%. And then when we issue the final payment, which is at final account, we release everything. So it's called variable because you start at 10 and then you keep varying it at different stages of the project. Okay. Then the fixed one is that one where you get your 5%, and then that 5% stays throughout, but you augment it with your payment reduction, which is that retention. So if the contractor, Tagazelo, your hand is noted, and in 10 minutes, I'm going to wrap this up because we've done guarantees before, but I need you to understand how this works or how they're administered. If he can't give any of these, so for whatever reason you've appointed this contractor, but none of the financial institutions are comfortable with giving him a guarantee, because remember, it comes from a financial services provider, like a Hollard or something. They give him a guarantee. So in the event that he defaults, you claim directly from them. So maybe they're like, I, my good say, you're not bankable. We can't give you that guarantee. We can't stand surety for you. But you still want to work with this contractor. Maybe this is your government and this is an emerging contractor and you want to give them a chance. But because they do not have a history in the industry and they do not have the financial muscle, financial service providers as private institutions are saying we're not willing to take a risk. But then you are a government that is trying to level the playing field for previously disadvantaged persons. So you say to them, okay, fine, I'll give you the contract. However, so this is if these two fail, he can't provide that, which is the orange line. Then you say, okay, fine, we'll give you the contract for 10 million. For every payment certificate that we pay you, we will reduce a certain amount. So you do work for, say, 800,000 in the first month, but we withhold 10% of that, until we have withheld 10% of the contract sum. So 10% of the 10 million. So if by certificate 5, we've withheld 1 million, which is the 10%, then we can't withhold anything. We just pay him whatever the certificate comes in at. Maybe it will make sense when I do the payment now. Are you sorted, ma'am?
Much better. Thank you.
All right. Tagazelo?
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, it's just reflected, if you could also just reflect to the previous slide. Yeah, I just wanted to just get clarity here.
Pearl, please. Go
Am I
ahead,
audible,
Tagazelo.
ma'am? Okay, as I was saying, ma'am, for the fixed construction guarantee, it says it starts with the 5% of the contract sum. So using the example that you've given us, the 10 million, it would start at that 5%, meaning 500,000 of that 10 million. And then the other 500,000 will be reduced when the practical completion has been completed. Am I understanding it properly? And then also when it going to variable construction, the 10% of the contract sum, does that mean that we are deducting, or rather we are retaining the 10%, which would be 1 million of that contract sum? So I just would like to just get clarity in terms of that, if I'm understanding you correctly. Thank you.
Okay, so the 5%, sorry, I drifted while you were talking. Something disturbed me, so I missed part of what you said. So if I'm repeating what you said, I apologize. I wasn't fully focusing. I just switched off my notifications on my computer because that's what distracted me. So I apologize. The 5% fixed, you get it. So at 10 million, he will give us a fixed guarantee of 500,000, right? That's the 5% of the contract sum. And then when he does the work at the first certificate where he's doing 800,000 worth of work, we will withhold a certain amount. So let's say we withhold 5%. Generally, from practice, what we do is we withhold 10% with each payment up to a maximum of 5%. So for instance, let's say I will delete this, but so from what you are saying, we're working on the 10 million rand, right? 10 million. Oh, maybe I should make it red so that it stands out. Yeah, we have 10 million, which is your contract sum. This is what happens when you don't have a chalkboard and you're not in class. So we have that as your contract sum. Then we're saying the fixed guarantee comes in, fixed construction guarantee becomes about 500K, right? That's fixed. And then we're gonna take payment reductions. So your payment reductions could be 10% of each payment, 10% of each payment up to maximum 5% of the contract sum. Ne? So up to, let's see if I can do a line. Nah, it doesn't. So 5% of the contract sum. Okay. So it will be, my arrows are not working. But anyway, it would be 10% of 5% of the contract sum. So now, because we are keeping 500,000, what we want from him in terms of payment reductions should be up to a maximum of 500,000 as well, so that all in all, we're keeping 1 million away from him. So when he does the first certificate, right, the first certificate, he does 800,000 worth of work. We take, so let's put it here, text. So these are the IPCs, interim payment certificates. The first one is 800,000, right? And then from 800,000, we withhold 10%. That's 80K. The second one, maybe he's done 2.5 million worth of work. So now we look at 10% of it, that's 250K. Then he does, let's say, 3.5 million. So this is cumulative. When we measure the work, we don't, so 2.5 includes the 800. This 3.5 also includes, so it's cumulative. And I think when you do certificates, you understand what cumulative means. So you have 300. Our maximum is 500K because it's 5% of the contract sum, right? So at a time where he's done, let's say, about 5 million worth of work, then we are going to withhold 500K, and that's the maximum we can take from the contractor. Any certificate that will follow, okay, let's make it 5M and not 5 milliliter, because yeah, any certificate that will come after he has done work up to 5 million, we're not going to retain anything because we've reached maximum retention, which is 5% of the contract sum. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Much clearer, much clearer.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I can move on because that's all I needed. That's all I owed you. 10 minutes. So we now deal with payment, right? We spoke about payment, and I said to you, I will load a payment certificate so that you can see. And yeah, I'm going to show you, or at least just go through a payment certificate. I remember I didn't have one. Is the payment certificate showing now, or do I need to stop showing? And you're going to have to speak. Okay, thank you. All right, so you have the payment certificate. So it will have the details. So, right, you will have the payment certificate. This is the JBCC document. You have the payment certificate number. You state, so this is payment certificate 1. So you state whether it's interim or final, or if it's practical completion, you also say if it's PC. So you will say interim, it's the first one. So you haven't done, and then it will have details of the employer, details of the contractor, what the project is. So remember, the employer is Mabatwana, contractor CLA8X00, right? That's the contractor. The works, that fencing around the Nasrec Expo Center, right, for 10 million. The site, so you give the address. And then the date of the valuation, so we valued on the 25th of May, we will issue it 5 days later, and then the payment is due in 30 days, which is on the 30th of June, right? So you have those dates. So you say value of work executed. So this takes you back to clause 25.3.1 on the JBCC document. So you can go to that subclause. So all the work that has been done up to this point, this is why I'm saying cumulative. So from when he started on site up to when you do the valuation. So we say it's that 800,000 worth of work. any materials and goods on site. So maybe he's got some bricks and cement and whatever. How much is it worth? So they would have given you their invoices and delivery notes. So you certify material on site, which is something you've seen. You've seen that it's stored safely, securely, and all of that. It's not in any danger, and it's covered by the contractor's insurance. So then you say, well, on material on site, he's got about let's say 100,000 worth of material on site, or 50,000 worth of material on site. So let's say work done was 750, and then 50,000 worth of material on site, materials and goods off site. So generally, we don't pay for material off site. Okay, we deal with it as an advance payment. So here we would leave it empty. So now you have 750,000 worth of work done plus 50,000 material on site. Then, okay, maybe I should write, instead of speaking. I do this every year, so it's easy for me to remember. But if you haven't, and then you have 50K here, which is your material on site. So the bags of cement there, you've counted, right? So here, we're not paying for any material off site, nothing. So now we have 800K, okay? Then security adjustments. So if this guy has given us a fixed payment guarantee, we're not going to take anything because he's given us a fixed payment guarantee. However, if he's given us not fixed, variable, so the 10% variable guarantee, he's given it to us, so it's an upfront guarantee, we don't take anything. If he's given us the 5% fixed, we say, okay, security adjustments applicable. So the security adjustment, because we're using the fixed guarantee, is 5%. So there you say 5%. So then, or you would say 10% up to a maximum. This certificate has sort of changed shape. We used to have space to make it up to a maximum. So let's just leave it at 5%, but you could say 5% up to a maximum. So you take payment reduction here. So what is the 5% of that 800? Okay. So it will be 40K, right? So it's less 40K, which is your security adjustment. And then you no longer have your 800K, you now have 760K. And the only reason I'm using the 5% is because I don't see where I can state what the maximum security adjustment would be. The old certificate used to show, so it used to have a few boxes where you say up to a maximum of. So now you have 760K. And then here we have the contract sum. It's 10 million, right? Current contract value. So we haven't had any variations. So it's still 10 million. But let's say, for instance, we had gone at 10 million, right? And then we decide that the initial gate we had proposed doesn't quite work. We want the big car gate and the pedestrian gate on one side as opposed to two opposite sides, whatever. So there's variation. So now the contract has moved. The contract sum is still 10 million, but now the contract value, because we have a variation, the contract is now, let's say 10.2 or whatever. So this value would change. At this point in the first certificate, this is still equal to the other, right? Then we say authorized adjustments to contract value. Are there any adjustments that we need to make to the contract value at this point? No. You can go to clause 26 to see what it is that you would be looking at as adjustments to the contract value. And I just want to make sure that I can read it out. I don't want to speak it from my head and then I mess it up. So we are on payment clause 26. So there, your adjustments to the contract value. This is the principal agent shall determine the value of adjustment to the contract value in cooperation with the contractor. So any variations that have been added, anything like that, you would put them here. Any work that was omitted because it's not done, any work, all of that. So whatever adjustments are there. So at this point, we don't have any adjustments, right? So we leave it at 0, no adjustments until such a time that you have adjustments. Then you have your cost fluctuations. So this would still be, so your cost fluctuations, this is your CPAP. Okay, contract price adjustment provisions. So there where you add escalation to the contract. We do not have any escalation here. So I'm just going to leave it at 0 because I'm not going on to the indices, right? So here, so because so generally you would allow a certain amount for cost fluctuations. Let's say 2 million because the project is going to take 2 years, but this is like a 6 months contract, so it's fixed. So now your 10 million contract value remains 10 million, whereas if you add cost fluctuations, it would go up. Then you are here, your current valuation, 750. And then how much in this valuation, how much are you putting in cost fluctuations? So remember, we don't have CPAP allowed for, so we don't have any CPAP. We're not paying the contractor anything. So now, the current certification, we are certifying 760K, all right? Then we say the previous, so this is your gross amount certified 760K because we've added everything or the zeros that are there. Then we say previous amount.
By the way, maybe 40K. Someone understand extra.
I'm going to start matching people out of my class. All right. If you are very busy with something else, please do it. I can't be secretariat and controlling your mics and lecturing. It's been a very cold day. Let's not do that. So we have, this is certificate 1. So we have not certified anything. So remember I said the amounts are cumulative. So you would have valued everything. So let's say this is the third certificate, you have your 3.5 million here, and then you would say, okay, previous amount certified, that would be your certification number 2. And then you would go to this point at certificate number 2 and then put it here. So the difference between cumulative today and what was cumulative last month would be what you are paying. So now we're still at 760. Then you go down to expense and loss payable to the employer. This would be on your recovery statement. I'll show you an example of a recovery statement. We don't have anything right now on the recovery statement. There's no expenses, there's no loss. Any penalties levied and payable to the employer. So this is when the contractor is running late and we would deduct penalties. This is the first certificate. He's not late yet. Any expense and loss caused by a direct contractor. So, no damages payable to the contractor. So if there was damages to the works and the contractor had to do repair work, but this was not his fault. So maybe the employer's employees, a direct contractor, or someone like that, then the contractor needs to be paid, and we need to state that this is not part of his scope, so it doesn't go to the 10 million. This is money that he spent repairing work that had already been done. He did work, we paid him for it, and then somebody made a mess of the work, and now we have to pay him. This is the first certificate. Nothing like that has happened. Any expense or loss suffered by caused by a direct contractor. So let's say the direct contractor delayed or did something, and then the contractor suffered a loss or an expense. Again, we paid there. This would also be reflected in detail on the recovery statement. Termination of a nominated or a selected subcontractor, which is the employer's default. Again, this would be reflected right now. This is the first certificate. We don't have any such issues. Then we will say subtotal. So this would be your 10 million plus cost fluctuations. We don't have, so we're still at 10 million with the contract. Here, there hasn't been any variations. There hasn't been any cost fluctuations. So we are still at 10 million. It's quite normal that as you move with the project, the contract sum will always stay the same, but your contract value will change. It may change from the 10 million to something else. And then we will say, what is the tax? So we're talking about VAT. So VAT in South Africa, after Melusi Gigaba happened, we charge it at 15%. It used to be 14. That guy said he's taking it up temporarily. He will take it down. The temporarily hasn't passed. So now what is 15% of 10 million? That will be, I think, about 1.5. So now that 10 million plus your 1.5 will be, oh gosh, 11.5 million, right? Same thing. So this is the amount including VAT. Then you have your 760, because remember, we have 760, so there's nothing to add, there's nothing to remove here. So you're still at 760K, that's the amount that the contractor needs to be paid for. And then what's 15% of that? I know 7%, I know 10%, the minute is 15%, I no longer know. So it becomes 8. So the 15% would be 114K, right? So then your total amount is 874. So this is default interest. So you have your tax there, and then you ask, what is the default interest payable to the employer? So maybe there was a delay in what the contractor was supposed to do, and he has to pay interest. There is no interest due at this point. Any advance payment that needs to be recouped from the contractor, we did not give him any advance payment. Default interest payable to the contractor. So here we would be saying less default interest payable by the employer. So sorry, the default interest is if the employer delayed or the payable to the employer, the contractor delayed, like I said, and then he needs to pay. So we deduct from his payment, and then we deduct. So you don't add the VAT yet. Okay, so you would still be dealing with the 760. So you these are VAT what's the word? Okay, the English has escaped me. It's too late in the evening, but yeah, they're not, they're sort of VAT-free type of thing. And then we don't charge VAT on interest. We will just charge you the interest on the amount that was owed. And then any default interest payable to the contractor. So let's say the employer delayed making a particular payment and the contractor now needs to get his payment plus interest, which is what the employer owes him. Then it would be paid here, but this is the first certificate. We have none of that. Any compensatory interest that is payable to the contractor, we have none of that. Then any advance payment made to the contractor or any advance payment we're making right now, nothing. Okay. Okay, so the word is non-taxable. So these are non-taxable. Any other non-taxable amount, we don't have any other non-taxable amount. So now we have the total at 874. So the 760 plus the 114, right? So currency, that would be rands, and you put it there because you could be running this project in Botswana and you should be doing it in Pula, but we show that South Africa, we're working with rands, currency rands, certified amount due for payment to the contractor. That's your 874. You put it there, and then you say construction sum, execution, security for construction, variable only if there's any securities that. So for instance, we need to reduce the security, whatever. At this point, we're not doing anything. And here you will show if we are at 50%. So if this amount, the contract, the amount that we're certifying, if it is less than 50%, if it's greater or equals to 50%, if we're at practical completion, if we're at final completion, that helps in showing what we are adjusting. and then the principal agent will put their details here, name and address. So usually they put their stamp and then they sign and the date. Okay, so the second page of this is generally evaluation. I didn't download that, but it's done by the quantity surveyor. It's pretty much the same. It informs this for the project manager, and then the project manager or the principal agent would be signing here. Okay, so that's on payment. I suppose then I can close this. And no, I don't want to save the changes. And then I can show you a recovery statement. Okay, can you see the recovery statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So with the recovery statement, you will say, we're doing the recovery statement for which certificate, right? And the principal building agreement 6.2 of May 18, and then the date of the certificate, employer, contractor, same details, right? And then amounts due to the employer. So paying charges, so you would say what the amounts are, any affecting insurances, contractor's default. So let's say the employer now ended up having to put insurances because the contractor was not doing it and whatever. So you would show the total amount, you work on cumulative less recovery, cumulative less recovery, and then whatever it is, termination of the agreement by the employer, you would show the amounts here, termination of a nominated subcontractor or a selected subcontractor, the cost of it, anything that needs to be recovered, any default by the contractor where he now has to reimburse the employer, it would be reflected here. And then if was previous recovery, so you work on cumulative amounts and then you say less, and then how much would it be for this recovery, and adjustments of subcontractor preliminaries, if there's any, and then you would have your subtotals there, and then recovery this period. So this is for this certificate, this is how much you're recovering. Recoupment from the contractor for advance payment. You would say we gave them, let's say 500,000 advance payment. We've already recovered 350, and then this period we're recovering. Mello, I noted your hand. I will take it now. Any penalties, default interests, amounts to the contractor, compensatory interest, all of that, you show it. And then again, it will be signed at the end. So here, when we are issuing an advance payment for the first time, we would show the total amount to say it's not recoupment, but it's issuing of it. Ooh, they've changed this form, but now it should show where it's an amount due to the contractor. So it would be, it's not recoupment, it's such amounts due to the contractor. So you would have it, or here, 2.5, I missed it. So if we're giving him an advance payment of 500,000, we give him the 500,000 and we show that we haven't recovered anything. So we're not recovering anything this period. It's what we are giving him. Sekgopotshe, you can ask your question.
Good evening, ma'am.
Evening. I hope I said your name correctly. Sorry. Yeah,
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, that exam, are you going to give us like specifications of like a scenario, and then we have to take that and fill in a recovery statement, for example, and then
No, you're not going to do a certificate or recovery statement. That's economics.
Okay, all right.
I'm not going to ask you to do that. I'm interested in you applying the law of contract. What you do
Makes
with your
sense why
maths
you're
is
so fast. Makes sense why you're
Thank
so
God.
fast. Because I'm like, oh no.
No.
Okay, that's
So
fine.
it is just like I would say to previous classes, I just want to show you that there's method to that madness. So there's a reason why you sit in economics class and you focus on certain things. It speaks to how you apply the contract. So there is actually, so I'm not teaching you how to do a recovery statement. I'm not teaching you how to do a payment certificate. I'm just trying to show you that there's a relationship between what you do there and the contract itself.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, so if we were doing certificates, I'd be doing them in Excel. Okay, so no, I'm not gonna ask you. I may ask you what happens to a variable construction guarantee when 50% of the contract sum is certified, and you'll tell me that it reduces to 6%, but I would not ask you to compile a certificate or anything like that. Okay? Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
All right. So, okay, Tsegofatso.
Thank you, ma'am. Just as a question, I see there's a lot of clauses that are being referenced here. Are we gonna be able to come to the test with the actual document, or are we expected to memorize all of these clauses?
No. So short story. Old people always tell stories. I hated history because we were forced to remember dates. 1657. What was the name of his boat or his ship? Who was he? Jan van der Beek. I hate numbers. And this is rich coming from a QS. So you don't have to know the clauses off by heart. If I'm stating a clause and I say clause 25.12 says this, I will quote it and show you what it says and I ask you to apply it. In real life, you're never going to have to memorize clauses. You will have the JBCC document with you. You will read it and say, this is what the clause says, and then you will have to apply it. And that's how I'm going to test you. You're not going to have to cross-reference, and memorize the clauses. So I could ask you, what happens to penalties at practical completion? You don't have to know which clause practical completion is. You just know that at practical completion, penalties cease. Once we achieve practical completion, we can't charge penalties anymore. Tagazelo? Oh, sorry, are you answered to?
100%, thank you.
Okay. Tagazelo, you can come through.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, I just wanted to ask, can you come with your own JBCC to the test?
Nope, this is not quantities where you bring the standard system. You come with a pen and a rule. Not even headphones. No, you can't.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we've covered the payment clauses. We discussed adjustment of a contract value and final account in clause 26. We spoke about that. We've spoken about recovery of expense and loss, which is what I've just covered with you. Now, you're gonna have the 8 minutes break and then we come back to suspension, which is clause 28, and then we move on to clause 29, which is termination. All right. So I'm gonna stop recording and give you a break. For some reason, I don't feel like I've been speaking too much because you've been asking me questions. At least we were talking, unlike when I preach. But yeah, when it hits 8 o'clock, please just come back. So short comfort break, and then we come back to do suspension and termination. Thanks, everyone.